Welcome to Hayes Reviews. So the second thing I wanted to look at is government by algorithm. And this is another part of the same series on Algocracy. Government by algorithm is an alternative form of government or social ordering where the usage of computer algorithms is applied to regulations, law enforcement, and generally any aspect of everyday life. Any aspect at all. Just anything. What time you go to the toilet, what time you wake up, how the work that you do, what you're allowed to buy, the hobbies that you have, the people you interact with, the places you can go. Any aspect of everyday life is going to be fed into an algorithm which dictates what you do. And that's what's happening, right? People now are so happy to hand over all their data and information to a piece of software that's going to tell them what to do. It's alarming how dependent people have become, and they'll just feed all their information into a program and they'll have it plan their business, plan their day, tell them what meals to eat, tell them how long to do a certain activity, where to go. It's all becoming automated, and the more automated it all becomes, the less human it becomes, because what do we lose? We lose spontaneity. We lose the ability to creatively improvise. We don't get bored, so we don't create as much. There's a whole slew of behaviors, aspects, aptitudes, skills, dimensions to the human being that are under threat at the moment through this over-reliance on algorithmic data processing. It's quite creepy. But this idea has been around since 2013. And it's defined as setting the standard, monitoring and modifying behavior by means of computational algorithms. Automation of judiciary is in its scope. So how about that? In the context of blockchain, it is also known as blockchain governance. And I'll just mention as well, as I've said before, you got the World Wide Web, the internet, and then you've got a block and a chain. I mean, if all that stuff combined doesn't sound to you like slavery, net, web, blockchain, then I don't think you're going to be able to see what I'm trying to describe to you. But this government by algorithm article has a lot in it. Some sources equate cyberocracy, which is a hypothetical form of government that rules by the effective use of information. So it's the effective use, hopefully the safe use as well. Hopefully they will only use information in a safe and effective way. And this word cyberocracy is equated with algorithmic governance, although algorithms are not the only means of processing information. So what's the history of government by algorithm? Well, it goes back to 1962, and Alexander Karkevich published an article in the journal Communist. So there was a journal, and it was just called Communist, and this fella wrote about a computer network for processing information and controlling the economy. So the history of government by algorithm goes back to a communist, literally, in the 1960s. He also proposed to make a network like the modern internet for the needs of algorithmic governance. Ooh, well, isn't that interesting? So I'll go back again to this book, Surveillance Valley, which I recommend everybody buys a copy of and reads, and buy it for your friends and your family as well, and children, and anyone who uses the internet, because if you don't know this information, then you have no idea what you're dealing with when you're using the internet. You really don't. But the reason I wanted to go to this is because I thought, when I was reading about this history, 1962, I thought, if I remember correctly, this book starts some time around that in the 60s as well. And so I had a quick look. And part 1, Lost History, the first sentence is, on June the 8th, 1961, a military intelligence officer named William Godell arrived in Saigon from Washington, D.C. And then he goes on to explain how he was involved with Project Agile, some counterinsurgency efforts, and the rolling out and experimentation of a bunch of technologies by ARPA, which became DARPA, in Thailand and Vietnam, including things like Agent Orange, in working in cooperation with Dow Chemicals and Monsanto. And it all goes on from there. So, very important context, very important history, and it overlaps and aligns with what we're reading here on Wikipedia, although the Wikipedia version just mentions that this was happening in Russia and the communists were trying to do it. Doesn't mention the capitalists were also involved and interested in doing this. But to go back to the article, the CIA were a little bit worried about this algorithmic governance idea. And by seriously concerned, I think what is like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. we got to do it first. But of course they had to do some blame throwing, and then you had Arthur Schlesinger Jr. warning that by 1970 the USSR may have a radically new production technology involving total enterprises or complexes of industries managed by closed-loop feedback control, employing self-teaching computers by 1970. So really drumming up the fear, really stoking that fire, like they do, right? It's classic to play the blame game and say, oh, those crazy things that those people are doing over there, when actually you're doing it yourself. It's part of the inversion of the times that we're living through also. But Chile also got involved. They had Project Cybersign between 1971 and 73. This was a project that was aimed at constructing distributed decision support system to improve the management of the national economy. And then they scored a win against the CIA, where elements of the project were used in 1972 to successfully overcome the traffic collapse caused by a CIA-sponsored strike of 40,000 truck drivers. So, yeah, fair play to the Chilean government there. 1-0 Chile. Also, in the 60s and 70s, Herbert A. Simon championed expert systems as tools for rationalization and evaluation of administrative behavior. And there's that word, experts, the times we are living in. It's ruled by experts, of course. I think most of us are aware of that. So having a system called expert systems, no surprise at all. It goes back a ways. It goes back to the 60s. But continuing, the automation of rule-based processes was an ambition of tax agencies over many decades, resulting in varying successes. So it was the protection money. It was the people who collect the protection money on behalf of the mob. They're the ones who want to automate this stuff. They're the ones who were like, you know what? If we give them the money and then ask them to give it back to us, a bunch of them are going to say no. If we just take the money out before we give it to them and we automate that, then they can't do anything about it. They can't say no. They can't withhold it. They can't withdraw their consent. That's a sign that you're living in an authoritarian system, right? But a little admission there. Who's this serving? Who's all this technology, research, like R&D, research and development? Where's it coming from? Who's it being pushed by? Well, it's the people who control the money and collect the money and exploit you for your money. That's probably not a shocking surprise to most people out there, though. A little more history. In 1993, the computer scientist Paul Cockshott and his economist friend Alan Cottrell published a book, Towards a New Socialism, where they claimed to demonstrate the possibility of a democratically planned economy built on modern computer technology. How can a planned economy built on computer be democratic? What even is democracy? Well, don't try and find out on Wikipedia. That's my advice. In 2006, attorney Lawrence Lessig, known for the slogan "Code is Law," wrote, "The invisible hand of cyberspace is building an architecture This invisible hand, pushed by government and by commerce, so that's your public-private partnership again, government and commerce, is constructing an architecture that will perfect control and make highly efficient regulation possible. That was 2006, more recent. But it's a long-term plan, and the introduction of personal computing into our lives is no accident. It's to get everyone online, to get everyone used to having their data collected, to giving everything up to the little device, erosion of privacy, the digital twinning of each individual so that all that data can be modeled and assessed. Different plans can be tested out before they are rolled out. Our behavior can be predicted and therefore controlled. And this has been in the works since the 60s and is baked into the very origins of technology and all the technological development that we've seen since then. Lawrence Lessig summed it up very nicely in that little paragraph there, which also happens to be footnote number 33, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Continuing, since the 2000s, algorithms have been designed and used to automatically analyze surveillance videos. Since the 2000s, so it's been in use for quite a while. Another book here, Virtual Migration by A. Anish, developed the in this book, A. Anish developed the concept of algocracy. Information technologies constrain human participation in public decision-making. It's a really weird sentence, that second part of it there. It's just a declarative statement that IT constrains human participation in public decision-making. Well, that sounds very democratic, doesn't it? Examples. So what is algocracy? What is government by algorithm going to be used for? Well, number one, smart cities. Yippee. Smart city is an urban area where collected surveillance data is used to improve various operations. I'm sure it will be used for our benefit, of course. This involves automated decision-making and replacement of public agencies by algorithmic governance. In particular, the combined use of artificial intelligence and blockchains for IoT, that's Internet of Things, may lead to the creation of sustainable smart city ecosystems. I like how they put the modal verb in there. It might lead to this. It might lead to some sort of dystopian, technocratic, panopticon prison system that everybody hates. Or it might lead to a sustainable smart city ecosystem. What does sustainable mean? Well, we all know on this channel that sustainability, sustainable development actually just means permanent austerity. I call it sustainable austerity. A study of smart city initiatives in the US shows that it requires public sector as a main organizer and coordinator, and the private sector, shocker, as a technology and infrastructure provider. So there's your public-private partnership yet again. But for some reason, they also want to involve universities as expertise contributors. I don't know what universities are experts in these days, apart from, left-leaning woke ideology. But, yeah, I guess they got to include them as well. Don't want the students to feel left out, the grads, There's a line here as well about The Line, which is a Saudi Arabian dystopian project. And they've said that it's going to be monitored by AI to improve life by using data and predictive modeling. And I'm sure improve is the right word there. I'm sure they didn't mean to say control or restrict or limit. It's all vague, isn't it? We're going to improve life. What does that even mean? How do you improve life? Life's pretty good as it is. It doesn't need much improvement. You don't need to mess with life. Life does its thing. It creates more life. Life eats life. Life ends and more life starts. It's ticking over quite nicely. I don't know what we can do to improve it. I certainly don't know what AI can do to improve it. improve life. You know, like no one's ever been sitting there just watching a sunset. Maybe you know, you're on holiday, sitting on a beach watching a sunset, and just like, this is great, but I wish AI could improve it a little bit. You know, it's so crazy. But yeah, they're rolling it out into smart cities, and you can go and live in one if you want to. They're also going to be using it in reputation systems, which is another way of saying credit scores, social credit score. For example, once taxi drivers are rated by passengers, the quality of their services will improve automatically, and drivers who provide poor services are eliminated. Boom, you're gone. You're dead. You're out of here. There'll be a little your car will be your car will self-destruct after you get too many poor reviews, or it'll just drive you into a tree or something like that. You know, you'll just lose control of it one night. But yeah, if you're a taxi driver, be careful, watch out, make sure you get those 5-star reviews. Just like if you're an actor over in China, you're going to get penetrated. Well, if you're a taxi driver, you're going to get eliminated. So taxi drivers and actors, you know, it might be a good time to think of a career change. But don't worry, because it tells us that several ethical aspects of that technology are still being discussed. Phew, that's good. I'm glad they're discussing the ethical aspects. It tells us here a little bit about China's social credit system was said to be a mass surveillance effort with centralized numerical scoring for each citizen. And then it adds, though newer reports say that this is a widespread misconception. And I've heard from a few places that things aren't quite as bad in China as they've been depicted and described. People who have friends and contacts living there have said this. So it's not firsthand, it's secondhand. It is a bit anecdotal data. But huge, massive parts of China are still very like rural. They're not developed, right? So this idea of a all-encompassing panopticon surveillance social credit system, I think, might be a bit overblown. But again, China are the bad guys and Russia are the bad guys. And so we got to believe that they're evil and things are really terrible over there. So that where we are over here, we put up with it and we think it's so much better. As it's turning to shit before our very eyes, it's like, well, at least we're not in China because it's really bad over there, you see. So it serves a function to convince you that Russia and China is way, way, way terrible, and those people over there have a much harder time than you, so that you'll put up with your own technocratic dystopia as they build it around you. Another use is smart contracts. So these can be used in combination with cryptocurrencies to replace traditional ways of governance. And it says cryptocurrencies are currencies which are enabled by algorithms without a governmental central bank. That sounds pretty good. Central bank digital currency is the same technology, but it does use a central bank. Aww. It is soon to be employed by major unions and governments such as the European Union and China. That sentence is, I think they're talking there about central bank digital currency, and they're just telling you right up front, out in the open, that European Union are going to use it and China. So the fact that they've been bashing China on this topic and then they just put the EU and China in the same sentence right there together also tells you a lot. These plans are worldwide. They are not coming from the people who we are told run the countries. It's not a nation state thing. This is outside, bigger, broader, beyond the nation state, because it's being rolled out everywhere in all of these places at the same time. Okay, so China is not going up against the EU. The people at the top of the EU, the people at the top of China, they're cooperating, they're working together. They put on a show, Punch and Judy show. They're puppeticians. And you can believe that there's a blue team and a red team, with or an EU team and a China team. But really there isn't at the very top. That's just an illusion for the little people. Continuing with the Wikipedia page, it says a decentralized autonomous organization is an organization represented by smart contracts that is transparent, controlled by shareholders, and not influenced by a central government, which actually sounds pretty good. But transparency means no privacy, which sounds pretty bad. Not influenced by a central government sounds pretty good, though. But if it's not influenced by a central government, what is it influenced by? And will it ever exist? Will a centralized government allow it to exist, you know? It says here as well that some countries, such as Georgia and Sweden, have already launched blockchain programs focusing on property, including land titles and real estate ownership. So this blockchain, as I've said, when you are chained to a block, you are a slave. You do not have freedom. Algorithms in government agencies. This bit was very interesting. So there was a Stanford University study where they said 45% of of the studied US federal agencies have experimented with AI and machine learning tools up to 2020. So we got it all in the last year or two. You know, it was like, oh, ChatGPT, and everyone's using it, and now it's available to the public. But they've been using this stuff for way longer, privately, experimenting with it, running their trials and their tests. Of course they have, because it only comes out to the public when the time is right to give it to the public. When it is part of the plan. When it's been tested and they've found the bugs and they know exactly the effect it's going to have on people. I mentioned in a previous episode about how I learned in this book, The Shallows, that one of the first chat bots written in the 60s was called Eliza, after the Eliza Doolittle character, which is from George Bernard Shaw's play. And then TrueStream Media did a fantastic video about the Eliza effect, which you should all go and look at. And it just shows you that this goes back to the 60s. Again, this has been researched and planned and prepared for 60 years at this point. So it's not all of a sudden just happening that, oh my goodness, AI is changing everything and nobody could have seen this coming. It's like they've been planning it and prepping it and aiming to take us in this direction for a very long time. And you only need to read these two books, which are mainstream, easily accessible books. They're not hidden. You can get probably secondhand copies of these for less than 20 quid. And then you'll know that this has been planned and for a very long time. But to go back to the article, they've been using these tools in federal agencies since 2020, and 53% of the applications were produced by experts, in-house experts. So I'm sure there's no bias in them whatsoever. It says commercial providers of residual applications include Palantir Technology, which is Peter Thiel's thing. There's some use cases, and then some more there's some more things that it will be used for down here that are mentioned. In 2012, for example, No PD started a collaboration with Palantir Technologies in the field of predictive policing. So that's your Minority Report. That's your, hey, you're going to commit a crime next week, so we're going to arrest you and put you in prison today, right? That's predictive policing. What's up, Mindhack? Good to see you. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Hope you're doing well. Another use case is Atlas, which apparently pissed a lot of people off. This was the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They used some software called Atlas, and that ran on the Amazon cloud. So again, it's your public and your private working together, public-private partnerships. In Estonia, you got artificial intelligence being used in e-government to make it automated and seamless. A virtual assistant will guide citizens through any interactions they have with the government. like dealing with the government isn't already infuriating and bewildering and overwhelming and annoying and frustrating enough. They've now thrown in a virtual assistant who's going to be super polite and sickeningly helpful to the point where you're going to rage quit, and that's the point. They also have a push function where automated and proactive services are pushed to citizens at key events in their lives. One example is the automated registering of babies when they are born. So again, everything you do, say, think, every milestone, every way, every move, everything that happens to you is going to be tracked, traced, and databased, and the government will be there to tell you what to do next. Fill in this form, apply for this thing over here, get your permit, get your license, pay your fees, pay your dues, pay your taxes, pay your protection money, and that's what it's going to be, cradle to grave. A planned. It's not just the planned society; it's the planned life of every person in that society. And if you deviate from the plan laid out ahead of you, then they'll arrest you on some pre-crime basis, right? Because it's like, oh, you deviated from your daily 9-to-5 routine that we have algorithmically assigned to you. Therefore, you're likely to commit a crime and cause a problem to the perfect society. So we're going to have to arrest you, put you in prison. You can just see where this is all going. You just connect the dots. You don't even need to go. Like, you can learn about it and read it all it's all on Wikipedia. You don't even need to buy the books. I'm always like, buy the books and protect them. They might disappear. You don't even need the books. You can just read about it all on Wikipedia. It's all right here. It's crazy. Mindhack says, I'm not down with it. Fascism. No, I don't think any of us should be down with it. Okay, justice by algorithm. It gets better. So according to the statement of Beijing, China is the first country to create an internet court or cyber court. The Chinese AI judge is a virtual recreation of an actual female judge. She, quote, will help the court judges complete repetitive basic work, including litigation reception, thus enabling professional practitioners to focus better on their trial work. Oh, how helpful and beneficial. And then also there's a thing here about law bots, which can perform tasks that are typically done by paralegals or young associates at law firms. So there you are. If you want to get your experience and become a lawyer by, getting in at the bottom and working your way up, well, good luck competing with the law bots. I hope you are better than a piece of software. I hope you can work longer hours and make fewer mistakes than a piece of software. Because if you can't, good luck with your law career. What about algorithms in education? Well, this sentence really got under my skin. It says, due to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. So firstly, hang on, I'll read the whole sentence and then I'll tell you why it got under my skin. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, in-person final exams were impossible for thousands of students. Right. One, it wasn't due to this event that they say it was due to. It was due to the measures put in place under the guise of protecting people during this event, right? It was because of lockdowns. It was because of threatening and bullying and coercing and manipulating people to be too scared to go outside and do anything. They were just staying at home, drinking wine. They were just staying at home, poisoning themselves, consuming a never-ending buffet of outrage, fear, and fear-mongering pumped into their minds by way of the screens. So that was what happened, right? You should know. And if you don't know, I got a book for you. But you should know that there was no pandemic. It was an illusion of a pandemic. It was like an illusion. I don't know a better word than that. In war where they get these inflatable tanks that look super, hyper realistic, but then you see the soldiers, they just pick them up with one hand. And the idea is that planes look down and they see all these tanks and they think, oh my God, they got so many tanks in that army. That's what it was. It was an inflatable, lifelike, fake event filled with hot air. Okay? And if you don't believe me, then you obviously have not read this book, Pseudo Pandemic by Ian Davis. I don't know if it's Davis or Davies. I'm not sure how he pronounces it. But I'll just give you a little look in there. Tiny writing. And footnotes and references all the way through. And you can download that for free on his website. And it's great because it came out 2021. So it came out right at the beginning. And it's got a chapter in here called Sustainable Eugenics. So there you go. So that bugs me, right? Because it was never impossible for students to take their in-person exams. It was never impossible. It was never impossible. There was nothing preventing it apart from the government's mind control, threats, fear-mongering, and people's cowardice. And so that sentence really bugs me because that's the kind of sentence that mischaracterizes this massive event. And people read something like that and they gloss over it like, oh yeah, but remember during the pandemic and I couldn't do my exams. It was impossible for me to do my exams. Like, it wasn't possible. It was totally possible for students to go in and take their exams. It was totally possible. And there was no pandemic. It was a pseudo pandemic. Okay? It was fake. It was fake news. And that's all I got to say about that. AI teaching assistants are being developed and used for education, and there is also an ongoing debate on the possibility of teachers being entirely replaced by AI systems. Well, I suppose, AI teachers can't contract COVIDs, can they? Like AI teachers, they can't spread germs. They don't need to wash their hands. They'll never forget a student's face because they've got face recognition technology. They'll never forget a student's name. They've got biometric sensors. It's just sick and creepy where it's going. It really, really is. Turb says, I don't know what's more scary, AI or the fact 95% of the population have zero idea what has been going on or what is going on. I agree with you. I don't know which is worse. I think it's the second one, to be honest. That's because AI, I just don't use it. I'm avoiding it. I can see it. I can see when other people are using it, and I can see what it's doing to their products and services and the quality of discussion and the quality of their minds. And it's contributing to that second thing, the 95% of the population being clueless, and they're getting further dumbed down by it. Kelly Nora says, the ruse wasn't even that good. I took my kid out of school before it closed, and within 2 weeks, it was obviously BS to me. Then schools closed. Yeah, I panicked. I panicked for a few days where I had a real existential, like, oh my God, this is it. Everyone's going to die. But I just carried on gathering information and thinking. I mean, I don't call myself a critical thinker, but I'm an information hoarder, as you could probably tell. Right? So when I get hooked into something, I don't put it down. I really just go, I get it, all the interviews I can find. And when I find someone who makes sense to me, I listen to all their stuff. So I would find like a James Corbett, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to as much stuff as he does. And then he does interviews, and he talks to Patrick Wood, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm on a Patrick Wood binge. And then at some point, Patrick Wood talks to G. Edward Griffin, and now you're looking at G. Edward Griffin. Holy shit, he's been making these interviews since the 60s, and you go on a G. Edward Griffin binge, and and then sooner or later, without even having to do any analysis or critical thinking, you've just given yourself a big picture view on the matter and filled in all these neglected aspects of history which we don't get through our televisions and our mainstream schools, right? So you don't even need to be a intellectual, clever, intelligent, analytical, critical thinker. You just need to have an attention span and an appetite and a willingness to take in information. And we're blessed because we can do it now for free. Well, largely for free. Because of all the resources that have been put out there for our benefit. So a little bit of a tangent there, but teachers replaced by AI, politicians replaced by AI, justice, algorithm replaced by AI. It's just all here. It's just like, this is what's going to happen. So in 2018, an activist named Michihito Matsuda ran for mayor in the Tama City area of Tokyo as a human proxy for an artificial intelligence program. The project was backed by high-profile executives from SoftBank and Google. Of course, Google backed that. In 2023, the Japanese town Manazuru, a mayoral candidate called AI Mayor, hopes to be the first AI-powered office holder in Japan. This candidacy is said to be supported by a group led by Michihito Matsuda. I like reading Japanese names in a probably terrible Japanese accent. This bit was great. In the 2024 United Kingdom general election, oh God, get off my screen, Keir Starmer. Nightmare material. A businessman named Steve Endicott ran for the constituency of Brighton Pavilion as an AI avatar named AI Steve, saying that constituents could interact with AI Steve to shape policy. Endicott stated that he would only attend Parliament to vote based on policies which had garnered 50% support. AI Steve placed last with 179 votes. Bad luck, AI Steve. Try again in 4 years. Then there was a whole section on management of infection, which I just couldn't bring myself to read because I know how much bullshit there is wrapped up in germ theory and and I'm not saying germ theory is entirely wrong, and I'm not saying terrain theory is totally right. I think there's something going on in between, and over-reliance on either one of those two is going to be a problem. But I just wasn't willing to wade through this bit on how the Emperor's New Pandemic was so successfully averted by way of CCTV cameras and QR codes and blah, 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 blah. Like, I can't even bring myself to read that bit. So we're going to skip over it. There's a section here on reception. Benefits. What are the benefits of algocracy? Well, algorithmic regulation is supposed to be a system of governance where more exact data collected from citizens via their smart devices and computers, with their permission, of course, is used to more efficiently organize human life as a collective. Aha. Oh, so it all comes down to being a collective, to collectivism, to communitarianism, to joining the Borg and the hive mind. Got it. How are they doing it? Collecting data via smart devices and computers. So I can see a solution here, right? You just stop using smartphones and computers, or limit their use. Put them down once in a while. Go for a walk. Make some music. Play a board game with your family. Paint a picture. Do something. Do anything. Just do it away from a screen. Or get some privacy devices. Learn some stuff. There's plenty of information out there regarding tech which doesn't spy on you, give your data to bad guys. But we're being organized, we're being corralled, we're being nudged, we're being domesticated into a collective, right? We're all being homogenized, we're all being standardized. As Deloitte estimated in 2017, automation of U.S. government work could save 96.7 million federal hours annually, with a potential savings of $3.3 billion. 3.3. How about that? But there is some criticism. So the benefit is that we all get standardized into a collective hive mind. That's the benefit. So what's the downside? What's the risk? Well, algorithms could become susceptible to bias, a lack of transparency in how an algorithm may make decisions, and the accountability for such decisions. Yeah, so it's that computer says no comedy sketch, if you can call it comedy, that was on television here in the UK. Catherine Tate, I think she was called. Computer says no. And that's where we're at, right? If the computer says no, then you don't get to do the thing that you're trying to do. So we're very close to that already. There's a book called Weapons of Math Destruction, which is a great title. And that's a 2016 book. I do have it. I've got it. I bought it. I picked it up in a Oxfam back in Bristol. Can't find it now. Not sure which shelf I put it on. But it's in here somewhere. And that's about how algorithms and big data are suspected to increase inequality due to opacity, scale, and damage. Now, of course, they're going to increase inequality. That is the purpose, because the whole point of all the systems, the plans, the schemes, and the scams that we're living through is to increase inequality. That's why it happens year after year after year. That's why it happened during the big C Emperor's New Pandemic. Increase in inequality is the name of the game. That is why every system is the way it is. That is the way they've been designed. All the systems are working perfectly. And the data gathering, algorithmic use of AI is all part of that. So you don't need a book to tell you that. You got me. But I'm sure the book is good. I haven't read it yet, but it's a great title, and the cover's pretty neat as well. It's actually quite a similar, color scheme and branding to the pseudo-pandemic book. So that's a good sign, isn't it? All right, we're nearly at the end of this, and we're getting to tonight's reading. This bit gave me a chuckle. Apparently, there's a 2019 documentary called I, Human, and the contributors of that documentary expressed apprehension of infinitely stable dictatorships created by government AI. It didn't really give me a chuckle. Sorry, that's not what I meant to say. It's creepy, but it's an amazing phrase to use and be aware of. An infinitely stable dictatorship. So it's like once you're into this system and once it is fully online and operational, it is infinitely stable. There will not be a way out of it until just the entropy built into reality takes it out one day. Probably not in our lifetimes, So the creation of infinitely stable dictatorships is a genuine concern and something to be aware of. But, good luck trying to get other people to pay attention to it and to care about it. But you can at least point them to this documentary. I haven't seen it, but it's a 2019 documentary. And then some good stories here about pushback. So there was public criticism in Australia, which forced them to announce the suspension of the robo-debt scheme. And so that's good. And then also, in 2020, algorithms assigning exam grades to students in the UK sparked open protest under the banner, "Fuck the algorithm." And this protest was successful and the grades were taken back. So again, another jolly good bit of pushback and resistance. I like the fact that AI Steve did not get elected, and also that this "fuck the algorithm" movement had a bit of an effect as well. But unfortunately, there are morons among us, and the public acceptance is, well, not reassuring. So a 2019 poll conducted by IE University Center for the Governance of Change in Spain found 25% of citizens from selected European countries were somewhat or totally in favor of letting an artificial intelligence make important decisions about how their country is run. The following table lists the results by country. So this is somewhat or totally in favor of letting AI make important decisions about the country. In Germany, it's 31%. In the Netherlands, it's 43%. And in the UK, it's 31%. That is just mind-bogglingly. This is idiocracy. This is idiocracy in motion. We're heading into it. We're living through it. Researchers found some evidence that when citizens perceive, very important word there, perceive their political leaders or security providers to be untrustworthy, disappointing, or immoral, they prefer to replace them by artificial agents whom they consider to be more reliable. So it's not about the political leaders. So the point I want to make here is that it serves the agenda to make political leaders seem cartoonish, buffoonish, inept, stupid, unproductive, immoral, etc. Boris Johnson's a classic example of this with his stupid haircut and his clownish antics. Trump's same thing. if you get your people to lose faith in politics and the political process, you are preparing the ground for the rollout of a digital algocracy type of system to replace it. These politicians, they're so untrustworthy, they're so immoral and disappointing. Wouldn't it be better if we just had a logical, calm, data-driven, algorithmic AI system instead? None of those messy human emotions, none of those foibles, those failings of the human character, none of that. Get rid of that and just have a nice, clean, digital arbiter of everything. And apparently a lot of people think that's a good idea. Although there might be a clue here which says the evidence is established by survey experiments on university students of all genders, right? So, okay. It's university students. What do they know about anything, really, these days? I went through university. I grew up with the internet from a fairly young age. And even I know very little, but I'm starting to piece a few things together here and there. But the university students nowadays, they don't even know genders. They don't even know about chromosomes, right? The fact that this evidence has been compiled from all the genders, all of them. Not both of them, all of them. All of the however many of them that there are supposedly now. And the fact that this group of people believe that there are all of them, all the genders, maybe explains why this data is probably a lot of garbage and we shouldn't worry too much about it. But there's a little bit more down here. It says a 2021 poll indicates 51% of Europeans are in favor of reducing the number of national parliamentarians and reallocating these seats to an algorithm. So that's kind of freaky. That's a majority. This proposal has garnered substantial support in Spain, where it's 66%, Italy at 59%, and Estonia 56%. Conversely, the citizens of Germany, Netherlands, and UK and Sweden oppose the idea. So that's good news if you're in any of those countries. But there's an age bias as well. So it says that 60% of Europeans aged 25 to 34 support the measure, but a majority over 55 are against it. So it's the people with the life experience and the wisdom who've had time to read the books, who've had time to gather the knowledge from the people around them, who are saying this is stupid and a very bad idea. And it's the young people who don't know anything, who've been raised on Star Wars and Black Mirror and think technology is cool, and they don't have any attention span and they don't have any understanding of history, who are all gung-ho and, they're up for it. They think it's a good idea. So that says a lot. There's a little bit here about international perspectives, which is that 75% of Chinese respondents support the proposal to replace politicians with AI, and 60% of Americans are opposed to the proposal. So America might be a good choice if somebody out there is looking to emigrate to a place where there might be some resistance against replacing the government with AI software. There's a little bit here. See also, this gave me a chuckle, right? So after that whole thing we just read, the top recommended next piece of reading that they give to you is anti-corruption. Wouldn't you like to get rid of corruption? Well, we can get rid of it if we just replace all our politicians with software that we program and control. That's the small print underneath. You know, the message that goes that we program and control. All software would be programmed and controlled by people that we pay, So that gave me a chuckle. Anti-corruption. Yeah, if you're interested in Algocracy, you need to check out anti-corruption. And then also cyberocracy, cyberpunk, digital nations, management cybernetics, predictive analytics, all ties in and all links to this coming cyber dystopia of absolute control over everything we think, do, say, believe. It's a bit creepy. We've got Kelly Nora on YouTube saying, my college graduate cousin was the only one in my family swaddled in 3 masks during COVID. Vaxxed and constantly catches it, unlike the rest of us. Yeah. It's strange how that works, isn't it? I got a colleague of mine who was telling me about how when they go on holiday, they're the person who are anti-backing and wiping down everything on the plane, and everything that they touch and find, they're always using wet wipes and disinfecting, and then they all get sick. And this person has been off work, well, been ill for 2 weeks now with the COVID. And I'm sure they've had their injections and their boosters, and they're all up to date. Still getting sick anyway, regardless. So it does say a lot. And hence why I have a lot of reservations and skepticism about germ theory. And I don't buy the whole paradigm, hook, line, and sinker. But that brings us to the end of tonight's ramble. That went on for much longer than I thought it was going to. So thanks for hanging in there. But I think we all learned a little bit about the plans that are to come. And you don't even need to go to any little internet backwater to get it. It's right there on Wikipedia in your face.